The intern was a charming disaster, and the CEO fell head over heels in love. Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone! The first day of an internship is always memorable, either because everything goes perfectly or because everything goes terribly wrong. For Monica Martin, things were already going wrong before she even stepped into the Max Corp building. First, the bus broke down. Then, the taxi driver took the wrong route, and to top it all off, her heel got stuck in a grate on the sidewalk right in front of the building entrance. Now running late, and with her hair looking like a bird's nest after battling the wind on her way to work, Monica dashed across the lobby toward the elevator, which was just about to close.
Wait.
Hold it, she shouted as she sprinted like a rocket across the lobby. At the last second, she squeezed through the elevator doors, but her momentum was so strong that she crashed right into a tall man in a dark suit who was distracted on his phone. "Oh!" Monica exclaimed as she bumped into him. The man barely had time to react before letting out a pained grunt. Monica had stepped hard on his foot.
Ouch. Ouch. Ouch.
Monica jumped back, grabbing onto the elevator wall for support. The man, still in shock over what had just happened, looked at his foot and then at Monica with an expression of pure disbelief. "You stepped on me." "It wasn't intentional." Monica raised her hands. "But if it makes you feel any better, my foot hurts too." Before he could respond, his phone, which had flown out of his hand from the impact, hit the elevator floor with a loud thud. "Oh no!" Monica picked up the phone, praying it was still intact. The man snatched it back, gave her a sharp glare, and said coldly, "Fantastic. Now my phone has also taken a solo flight." Monica let out a nervous laugh. At least it survived, right? Modern phones are pretty tough. He pressed a side button and the screen flickered, cracked. Monica held her breath. "Well, I guess your phone now has a unique design. Custom made by Impact." The man let out a deep sigh and rubbed his temples, trying to stay calm. The elevator kept going up when suddenly it jolted and came to an abrupt stop. The lights flickered, and complete silence followed. Monica swallowed hard. Is this part of the decor?" The man ignored the joke and impatiently pressed the emergency button. "The elevator stopped," he said, clearly trying to stay composed. Monica's eyes widened. "Yeah, I noticed. My first day, and I'm already stuck in an elevator with a stranger. This has to be divine punishment for spilling coffee on my resume." The man gave her a suspicious look. How does someone spill coffee on their own resume? "Oh, it was an accident. But luckily, HR only read half of it before the ink smudged." Monica grinned. "What about you? How did you end up here?" He raised an eyebrow. I took the elevator." She sighed. "Wow, really? I never would have guessed." The man looked up at the ceiling as if asking the heavens for patience. "I work here." "Oh. So, you must know the emergency exit protocol. What do we do now?" "Shout for help. Send smoke signals." "We wait," he replied dryly. Monica crossed her arms. "That's boring." "Well, we're in an elevator, not a comedy show." Her eyes widened. "Speaking of which, do you like stand-up comedy?" The man looked at her as if she had just asked if he was an alien. "No." "Oh, that's a shame. I love it. There's this comedian who jokes about corporate meetings. He's brilliant. He says bosses always say, 'Let's handle this over email,' but no one ever responds to emails. Have you ever ignored emails?" "You talk a lot." "I talk a lot when I'm nervous," Monica admitted, frowning. "My brain sort of switches to AM radio mode and starts broadcasting every thought I have." "That's a problem." "I'd say it's an unrecognized talent." The intercom finally crackled, and a receptionist's voice echoed through the speaker. "Folks, we had a small malfunction. The elevator should be back up and running in about 5 minutes." "Great." The man leaned against the wall impatiently. Monica sighed dramatically. 5 minutes is enough time to reflect on life. "Tell me something. Have you ever done anything really embarrassing?" He blinked. "Why would I tell you that?" "Because we're stuck here, and according to the unofficial elevator code, When two people get trapped together, they have to share embarrassing secrets. I've never heard of that code. Of course not, because I just made it up. But the rule still stands. He stared at her, unable to believe he was having this conversation. All right, I'll play along. Monica leaned in eagerly. Go on. When I was a kid, he crossed his arms. I fell into a hotel pool during a trip because I wanted to see if it was possible to walk on water. Monica broke into a big smile. My God, did you think you were Jesus? I thought I had read something about water surface tension and wanted to test it. That's incredible. Wrong, but incredible. The elevator gave a slight jolt before continuing its ascent. Monica clapped excitedly. We're free. The man shook his head, looking relieved to be rid of her. When the doors opened on the 20th floor, he stepped out first. Monica followed right behind, adjusting her hair as if nothing had happened. At the reception desk, she was greeted by a smiling assistant. You must be the new intern. Mr. Blake wants to speak with you before you start. Monica froze. Mr. Blake. The assistant pointed toward a glass office, and there he was, the man from the elevator. The CEO of the company, Forks Blake. Monica held her breath. Oh, well, now I'm definitely getting fired. She wanted to dig a hole and hide in it forever. If only the elevator had stayed stuck for another hour, or if lightning had struck at that exact moment. Anything would have been better than walking into that man's office right after stepping on him, making him drop his phone, and forcing him to listen to her theories about elevator secrets. The CEO's assistant smiled. You can go in. He's expecting you. Expecting me to fire me, Monica thought. She forced a smile and stepped inside. Forks Blake was seated behind a spotless desk, looking very different from the annoyed man in the elevator. His suit was still perfect, his hair neatly in place, and his serious expression unchanged. He looked up at her. Oh, you again. Monica gave a nervous smile. The walking disaster in person. Forks gestured for her to sit. Monica Martin, right? She nodded, trying to maintain some dignity. Yes, sir. But if you need to pretend I never existed for the sake of your sanity, I completely understand. He ignored the comment. You've been approved for an internship in the project analysis department. That means handling reports, presentations, and meetings. Monica nodded, hoping he wouldn't bring up the elevator incident. I was told you're proactive. She blinked. They said that? Is that good news? Depends. Forks folded his hands on the desk. If proactive means you'll spill less coffee than the office average, then yes. She blushed. I solemnly swear to spill coffee no more than twice a week. Forks didn't laugh. You'll be working under. Monica's eyes widened. That's happened before? No, but with you. One can never be too sure. She opened her mouth to protest, but quickly realized she had no defense. Fair enough. He gestured toward the door, ending the meeting. You can go. And please, try not to step on anyone on your way. Elisa hurried out of the office. She had done it. She hadn't been fired on her first day, and that was already a victory. As soon as she arrived at the project analysis department, she realized she was already a bit of an office celebrity. The whispers were loud enough for her to hear. It's her, the intern who almost killed the CEO. I heard she threw his phone out the window. That's an exaggeration. It was just on the floor. Sure. She's looking. Victoria, the department manager, walked over. Welcome, Monica. Elisa smiled politely. Thank you. I'm really excited to start. Victoria nodded but seemed a little hesitant. I hope so. Just a heads up. Our department is very structured. People here are extremely organized. Monica beamed. Oh, of course. I'm super organized too. At that exact moment, her bag slipped from her shoulder and knocked over a stack of documents from a colleague's desk. Papers scattered everywhere. The silence was deafening. Oh, Monica mumbled. That was a test. Victoria sighed. I'll show you to your desk. She handed Monica a folder. Here are some reports you need to organize and review. It's simple. Just put the documents in order, check the spreadsheets, and enter everything into the system. Sounds easy. Monica grinned.
Great.
We need it done in 3 hours. Victoria walked away, leaving Monica to her first task. She opened a folder and found dozens of pages filled with charts and complex tables. All right, I can do this. 5 minutes later. I definitely cannot do this. The charts looked like ancient mystical runes. The tables had more numbers than a rocket's instruction manual. But Monica wasn't about to give up. I need a plan. Then, she had a brilliant idea. She grabbed some colorful sticky notes and started labeling the spreadsheets with funny names to help her remember what each one was about. The depression spreadsheet, because the numbers just kept dropping. The sadness chart, because it looked like a downward spiral. The bankruptcy tables, self-explanatory. Proud of her revolutionary system, she kept working. Monica was so focused that she didn't notice when Victoria walked back in. How's it going? Monica jumped in surprise and, in the process, knocked over her cup of coffee, right onto the documents. Victoria's eyes widened. Monica, I can explain. Monica grabbed napkins frantically, but it was too late. The tables were completely smudged. The whole office went silent. Oh my God, someone murmured. Victoria rubbed her temples. How much coffee do you drink per day? Not enough to handle this, Monica muttered. Victoria took a deep breath. Okay, reprint everything and redo the notes. Monica sighed in relief. So, I still have a job. Victoria paused. For now. A run-in with the CEO. After an entire afternoon fixing the disaster, Monica finally finished her work. As she got up to deliver the documents to Victoria, she heard murmurs in the office. The CEO is coming. Forks Blake walked into the department like a king inspecting his kingdom. Everyone immediately straightened up. Monica tried to look professional, but her nerves got the best of her. The stack of documents slipped from her hands, right at Forks' feet. He looked down at the papers, then back up at Monica. She gave him an awkward smile. Oh, hi. Again. Forks took a deep breath. Do you have something against documents? She quickly crouched down to pick them up. No, I love documents. They're so rectangular. He raised an eyebrow. Rectangular?
Yes.
And printed. Very nice. He looked at her, completely baffled. Good to know. He grabbed a report and flipped through it. Then he paused. Why is this chart labeled the sadness chart? The office fell into absolute silence. Monica felt her soul leave her body. I can explain, she stammered. Forks slowly closed the report. This better be a really good explanation. The entire room held its breath. Monica's face grew so hot she was sure she could fry an egg on her forehead. There he was, Forks Blake, the most intimidating CEO in CEO history, holding a report labeled the sadness chart and looking at her like he was trying to decide if this was a prank or a patience test. She opened her mouth to explain, but her brain went into emergency mode. The only thing that came out was, well, if I were a chart, that's what I'd be called too. The office remained dead silent. Forks pinched the bridge of his nose, as if asking the universe for strength. Why exactly did you name the spreadsheets like this? Monica swallowed hard. Well, Mr. Blake, numbers can be so cold. So, I gave them personality. Now they're charts with feelings. Personality, he repeated. She nodded enthusiastically. Yes. Look, the sadness chart shows a huge drop in performance. The name makes sense. And the bankruptcy table? A tragedy. We need to feel the impact of these numbers to truly understand their story. Forks blinked. You just described financial reports like a soap opera. Monica gave a sheepish smile. With the right soundtrack, it would be even better. Forks wasn't sure if he should laugh or fire her on the spot. Change the names. Now. She nodded so fast she looked like a bobblehead. Right away, sir. He muttered something about the company attracting chaos geniuses before walking out. As soon as the door closed, the office erupted in whispers. Oh my God. You survived. I thought he was going to fire you on the spot. Seriously, who labels a corporate report the sadness chart? Monica sighed, collapsing into her chair. Well, at least he didn't throw a stapler at me. I'd call that a win. The late-night dance show. Because of the spreadsheet disaster, Monica had to stay late organizing the documents. Okay, just finish this and go home. But there was one small problem. She couldn't focus anymore. Her eyes were getting heavy. I need a boost. And what was the best way to stay awake? Music. Monica put on her headphones, opened her maximum energy playlist, and hit play. The moment the beat started, she couldn't resist. Without realizing it, she began moving her shoulders to the rhythm. Then her arms. Then her legs. Within minutes, she was dancing alone in the middle of the office, spinning around the desk, clapping to the beat, pretending her stapler was a microphone. She did a dramatic spin and, caught up in the moment, slid across her swivel chair like a rock star. And that's when she heard it. A quiet cough. Monica froze, still holding the stapler like a microphone.
Slowly, she turned around.
Forks Blake was standing at the door, arms crossed, watching her with an unreadable expression. For a moment, time stopped. She felt like her soul had just caught the first flight to another planet. Forks tilted his head.
Well,
that was unexpected. She dropped the stapler. I can explain. I'd love to hear this, he said. And just like that, Monica knew this internship was going to be very interesting. Monica felt a chill run down her spine. Wait. This CEO you're talking about, he's about 6 feet tall, has an intimidating stare, and an incredible talent for catching people dancing at the wrong time. Victoria gave her a blank stare. That's the one. Monica wanted to sink into her chair. I can't go. I have a commitment. Victoria raised an eyebrow. What commitment? I have to feed my fish. You have a fish? No, but I could. Victoria sighed. You don't have a choice. You'll be there at 8. Monica spent the rest of the day trying to come up with an excuse, but when the clock hit 7:30, she knew she was out of options. She arrived at the restaurant precisely at 8 o'clock, only to realize it was one of those expensive places where a single dish cost as much as her rent. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere sophisticated, and the waiters wore white gloves. She felt out of place just breathing in there. Forks was already seated at a table in the corner. When he saw her, he simply raised an eyebrow, not looking surprised at all. She walked over and sat down. Before you say anything, I just want to make it clear that I'm here under duress. Good to know. I'll have the waiter write that down, Forks replied. She picked up the menu and glanced at the prices. My God, there's a dish here that costs more than my refrigerator. If you want, you can order it, Forks said. I'd rather keep my fridge. At least it doesn't disappear after 5 minutes. Forks closed his menu and observed her for a moment. Do you always talk this much when you're nervous?
Yes.
And when I'm excited? And when I'm bored? And when I'm, well, basically always. I noticed. The waiter arrived and took their orders. Monica tried to look professional, but she couldn't ignore how ridiculously at ease Forks seemed while she was still figuring out how to hold the silverware properly. The investor hadn't arrived yet, leaving just the two of them stuck in an unexpected dinner. So, Forks began, have you come up with any new nicknames for the reports? I'm controlling myself, but I do have a chart saved in my drafts called The Roller Coaster of Despair. He shook his head, but for the first time, he actually seemed to enjoy the conversation. The dinner continued with a surprisingly light atmosphere. Forks seemed less rigid than usual, and Monica even started to relax. But as always, something had to go wrong. When the main course arrived, the food looked delicious, but after the first bite, something was off. Forks cleared his throat and raised a hand to it. Are you okay? Monica asked. He nodded, but his eyes were starting to water. Forks, you're turning red. It's under control. Are you allergic to something? He hesitated before answering. Shrimp. A passing waiter nearly dropped his tray. But sir, your dish contains shrimp. Monica's eyes widened. You ordered something you're allergic to? Forks looked uncomfortable. I didn't notice. You didn't notice? How does someone who's allergic not realize they're ordering exactly what they can't eat? I was distracted. You could have died from distraction. The waiter quickly stepped in. We can bring you an antihistamine, sir. Monica stood up. No need. I have one in my bag. Forks looked at her, skeptical. You carry allergy medication with you? I like to be prepared. Or just accident-prone. She pulled out the medicine and handed it to him. Here, take this before I have to call an ambulance and end up in the headlines as inexperienced intern kills CEO in fancy restaurant. Forks took the pill, and after a few minutes, the redness started to fade. The investor finally arrived, but the dinner had already been a complete disaster. As they left the restaurant, Forks sighed. Well, that was an interesting dinner. Yes, I learned a lot. He raised an eyebrow. Like what? That you don't pay enough attention to your food orders. And that I'm an excellent rescuer of reckless CEOs. He gave a faint smile. I'll make a note of that in my next report. She laughed. Please list it as Food Catastrophe Prevention Plan. He shook his head, but he didn't look annoyed. Good night, Monica. Good night, boss. She turned and walked away, but she felt like something had changed. Forks also stood there for a moment, watching her go. He still wasn't sure what to make of this clumsy, impossible-to-ignore intern, but one thing was certain. She had a unique way of turning any situation into a full-blown spectacle. The next morning, Monica arrived at the office feeling more confident than she had in previous days. Despite the occasional disaster, she was still employed, and for some unknown reason, Forks Blake didn't seem to want to throw her out the window. Considering last night's dinner, where she had practically saved his life, maybe he was even starting to see her differently. She walked through the project analysis department and sat at her desk, taking a deep breath. She was determined to have a calm, mistake-free day. But her plans started falling apart the moment Victoria appeared beside her with a serious expression. You're going to be working directly with the CEO this week. Monica blinked a few times, waiting for Victoria to burst out laughing and say it was just a joke. But her boss didn't seem the least bit amused. What do you mean? He wants you to review some reports from the technology department and put together a summary for him. Monica frowned. Me? Yes. But I'm just an intern. He specifically asked for you. Monica's stomach did a flip. Forks wanted her to work directly with him? After everything she had done in the past few days? What was going on? Are you sure he doesn't just want me to go organize the IT room cables? Positive. With no other choice, she grabbed her materials and headed to the executive floor, where the CEO's office was. When she walked in, she found Forks sitting behind a massive glass desk, flipping through a report. He looked up as she entered. Are you here ready to do serious work, or for another comedy scene? Monica pressed her lips together and set the folder on his desk. I'll focus to avoid any blunders. That must take a monumental effort. She sat down and began reviewing the documents Forks handed her. To her surprise, the work was actually interesting. He wanted her to summarize several proposals for a new expansion project, highlighting their strengths and weaknesses. For a while, everything went relatively smoothly. Monica managed to concentrate, and once she was fully immersed in the reports, she even forgot he was there. But then, as if the universe simply wouldn't allow her a moment of peace, her pen slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. She bent down to pick it up, and in the process, hit her head on the edge of the desk. The impact was strong enough to make her let out a small grunt. Forks glanced at her over his papers. Are you okay? Perfectly. Just testing my forehead's durability. He sighed and went back to his report, as if he were already used to this kind of thing from her. After a few hours of work, Forks finally closed one of the files and looked at her. You did a good job. Her eyes widened. Was that a compliment? Don't get used to it. She laughed. I'll remember it forever. But as the day went on, Monica noticed something strange. People were whispering about her. Did you see? He called her in again to review the reports. No way. Forks never takes an interest in anyone like this. Do you think something's going on? Monica nearly spilled her coffee. Oh no. What were they implying? Jokingly, someone in the office suggested placing bets on how long it would take for Forks and Monica to get involved. Her reaction was immediate. Wait, what? Victoria tried to hide her smile. Don't worry, it's just a joke. A joke? This is turning into a reality show. Well, Victoria shrugged. No one has ever seen the CEO act like this before. Monica buried her face in her hands. He's just testing me to see if I can do the job properly. Sure, Victoria said, though she didn't look convinced. Monica frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just that he doesn't usually test people like this. The rumors kept spreading, and to make things worse, Monica started noticing changes in Fork's behavior. During meetings, he not only listened to her suggestions but actually asked questions and discussed ideas with her. If she made a mistake, he wasn't as strict as he was with others. And that only fueled the gossip even more. One afternoon, while reviewing a file, Monica caught Forks watching her with a thoughtful expression. What? She asked. He raised an eyebrow. Nothing. I'm just wondering how someone so chaotic can be so efficient at the same time.
She grinned.
It's a rare gift. He closed one of the reports and leaned back. I have to admit, you've brought a little energy to the office. She crossed her arms. Are you saying I'm a hurricane?
Yes.
But a hurricane that somehow organizes files in the middle of the destruction. She laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. It seemed like an ordinary exchange, but for the rest of the office, it was practically a live performance. Every interaction between the two was analyzed with the same excitement as a championship game. Monica wasn't sure what was stranger, the gossip or the fact that Forks didn't seem to care. Did he even realize how much people were talking? If he did, he seemed determined to ignore it, which was exactly what she should be doing, too. But for some reason, it was hard to ignore the way he sometimes looked at her, like he was trying to figure out something even he couldn't quite explain. The engagement rumor. Monica was used to being the center of attention in the office, but nothing could have prepared her for the level of speculation that took over the company after that week. Just her presence on the executive floor was enough to make employees exchange glances. Every time she left the CEO's office, she'd catch whispers in the hallways and smirks hidden behind computer screens. She tried to ignore it. She was there to work, not to fuel gossip. But some conversations were impossible to tune out. I heard the CEO is getting married, someone whispered near the break room. Monica nearly choked on her coffee. What? The two employees who had been chatting froze when they realized she was nearby. Oh, you didn't know? Monica blinked.
No.
And I don't think I'm the only one. Well, apparently, it's an arranged marriage, one of them continued. A contract between wealthy families or something like that. Monica crossed her arms. That sounds like something out of a soap opera. But it makes sense. Forks is very private. He's never been seen in a public relationship. Monica stayed quiet. It wasn't any of her business, of course. But for some reason, the thought made her uneasy. A confrontation. Her productivity plummeted for the rest of the day. Every time she tried to focus on reports, her mind wandered back to Forks' supposed mysterious fiancé. By the end of the day, she decided there was only one way to get answers. She knocked on Forks' office door and walked in. As always, he was focused on a report. He glanced up for a second before returning to his work. Something wrong? He asked. Monica took a deep breath and got straight to the point. Are you engaged? Forks stopped writing. There was a long silence before he slowly set his pen down and leaned back in his chair, studying her with a curious expression. What makes you think that? She crossed her arms. The whole office is talking about it. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Office gossip spreads faster than emails. So, it's not true? Forks hesitated a second longer than she would have liked. Depends on how you look at it. Monica frowned. That's a very sophisticated way of saying maybe. He gave a slight smile, as if he found the whole thing amusing. And if it were true, would that change anything for you? She blinked, caught off guard by the question. No, it's just that, she trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Forks watched her reaction for a moment, then went back to his report as if the conversation was over. I think you already have your answer. Monica left the office, not entirely sure what she was feeling. If it was true, why wouldn't he just say so? And why did the thought of him being engaged bother her so much? A grand gesture, or not? The next day, The rumors only intensified. Some said the fiancé was a socialite from an influential family, while others insisted she was a mysterious businesswoman from abroad. Monica tried to ignore it, but before she realized it, she found herself giving Forks relationship advice. It started innocently enough. "If you really are engaged," she said one afternoon, "you should plan something romantic to surprise her." Forks, who had been reviewing a contract, stopped mid-sentence and looked at her. "Excuse me? I'm serious. You don't seem like the type to worry about these things, but women like unexpected gestures. Is that a proven fact, or just another one of your spontaneous theories?" Common sense. He closed the contract and crossed his arms. "And what kind of unexpected gesture would you recommend?" "A special dinner. Something well thought out, with a personal touch." He was silent for a moment. "A dinner, then?" "Yes, but not just any dinner. It has to show that you really care." Forks rested his chin on his hand, studying her thoughtfully. "All right, I'll plan a dinner." Monica felt a tightness in her chest but forced a smile. "That's great." The next day, she overheard a group of employees talking about the dinner Forks had planned for that evening. Her stomach sank. After all, she was the one who had suggested it. That was it. The company's CEO was going out for a romantic dinner with his mysterious fiancé. And it was all her fault. Without thinking, she decided she had to see it for herself. She took a taxi to the restaurant they had mentioned, determined to be discreet. As soon as she arrived, she spotted a reserved table with an elaborate setup. But something was off. The table was empty. Then she felt someone approaching from behind. Monica. She turned around and found Forks standing there, his expression a mix of amusement and disbelief. "What are you doing here?" he asked. She opened her mouth, but no reasonable answer came to mind. I heard about the dinner and..." He raised an eyebrow. "And decided to follow me? I just wanted to make sure everything was fine." Forks crossed his arms. "All right then. Tell me, where is my fiancé?" Monica blinked. "I should be asking you that." Forks let out a sigh, grabbed a napkin, and placed it on the empty table. "There is no fiancé." She froze. "What?" He gestured toward the untouched setup. "This was the special dinner you suggested. The one they're creating about us." She swallowed hard. "Well, it's just a story, right?" He nodded slowly, his gaze still locked on hers. "If you say so." A brief silence filled the air, and Monica quickly changed the subject before the dinner took a turn she wasn't ready for. "So, do you have any hobbies? Anything you do outside of work?" Forks thought for a moment. "I like to cook." Her eyes widened. "You're joking." He shook his head. "It's one of the few times I can focus on something without being interrupted by emails and meetings." Monica smiled. "I never would have pictured you in a kitchen. I bet you have a super formal apron and only cook dishes worthy of a 5-star restaurant." He shrugged. "I like simple dishes. The important thing is the flavor." "So, does that mean you make gourmet instant noodles?" He chuckled. "Never tried, but now I'm curious if that's a thing." She laughed. "I can teach you." Dinner went on with unexpectedly light conversation. When they finished their meal, Forks called the waiter to pay, but Monica stopped him. "I should pay for my part." He raised an eyebrow. "Who dragged you here in the first place?" She rolled her eyes. "You did." "Then let me pay." She sighed but didn't argue. When they left the restaurant, the night air was cold. Monica crossed her arms, regretting not bringing a jacket. Forks noticed and, without a word, took off his own jacket and placed it over her shoulders. She blinked. "You don't have to do this." "You're shivering." She lowered her head, holding the jacket closer and catching a scent on the fabric. "Thank you." They walked together to the parking lot in silence. When they reached Forks's car, he leaned against the door and looked at her. "I have to admit something." She looked up. "What?" "You have a natural talent for making a mess of everything around you." She laughed. "Is that a compliment or a critique?" "A bit of both." She smiled. "And you have a natural talent for leaving me speechless." He opened the car door for her and Monica got in, still holding onto the jacket. The ride back was quiet, but it wasn't awkward. For the first time, they both seemed comfortable just sharing the same space. When Forks parked in front of her building, Monica hesitated before getting out. "Thanks for dinner." He nodded. "It was more interesting than I expected." She smiled. "I hope that's a compliment." He didn't reply, just watched as she stepped out of the car. She handed back the jacket but, before closing the door, leaned slightly toward him. "Good night, Forks." He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Good night, Monica." She shut the door and walked into the building, feeling like something had changed that night, but she wasn't sure what. Monica tried to return to her normal work routine after the unexpected dinner with Forks, but something felt different. She wasn't sure if it was just her perception or if something had actually changed in the way he treated her. The looks he gave her when passing by her department were subtle, but they were there. Before, Forks had only seemed intrigued by her behavior. Now it felt like he was analyzing something more. And to make matters worse, the office rumors had grown even stronger. Every time Monica walked down the hall, the whispers got louder. It wasn't just the fact that she worked directly with Forks anymore. Now, everyone was talking about the dinner. During the coffee break, Victoria approached her with a mischievous smile. "So, you and the CEO have been going out together?" Monica nearly dropped her cup.
What?
"No." Victoria laughed. "All right, I believe you. But half the office doesn't. I went to the restaurant by chance, that's all."
Sure.
"And by chance, he was waiting for you with a reserved table." Monica rolled her eyes. "You're making this worse." Victoria leaned in, curious. "But really, what actually happened?" Monica sighed. "He tricked me with that engagement rumor. Said he was going out for a special dinner, and I went to check." Victoria's eyes widened. "You went after him?" "Not like that. I just wanted to understand what was going on." Victoria smirked. "And what happened?" Monica hesitated. "He said there was never any fiancé." Victoria thought for a moment, then laughed. "He's smart." Monica huffed. "Or he just enjoys driving me crazy." Or both. Before Monica could reply, an employee from the executive floor approached. "Monica Martins?" She turned, surprised. "Yes. Mr. Blake wants to see you in his office."
Now.
A chill ran down her spine.
Now.
She exchanged a glance with Victoria, who raised her eyebrows, clearly excited about the situation unfolding. Monica took a deep breath and headed for the elevator, mentally preparing herself for whatever was coming. When she entered Forks's office, she found him at his desk, as always, reviewing documents. He looked up when he saw her. "Close the door." She obeyed, then sat down across from him. "Did something happen?" He laced his fingers together and stared at her for a moment before speaking. "I have a proposal for you." She blinked. "That doesn't sound scary at all." He ignored the comment. "I need a date for a corporate event tomorrow night." She blinked again, not believing what she just heard. "You're asking me to be your date?" "Yes." Monica let out a nervous laugh. "Is this some kind of trap?" "You know it's not." She crossed her arms. "Why me?" "Because I need someone who isn't boring." Monica tilted her head. Was that a compliment or an insult? "Just an observation." She sighed. "I don't know if this is a good idea. The office is already full of rumors. If I show up with you at an event, they'll have me engaged by the next day." "Does that bother you?" She hesitated before answering. "It bothers me that people jump to the wrong conclusions." Forks leaned back in his chair. "Then go and prove them wrong." Monica realized he wasn't the kind of person who accepted refusals easily. "Is that an order?"
No.
"But if you say no, I'll have to take someone from the board. And honestly, I'd rather talk to you than any of them." She was surprised by his honesty. "Did you just admit that you enjoy my company?" He gave a slight smile. "I admitted that you're not boring." She considered it for a moment. "What kind of event is this?" "A business gathering. Nothing too formal." She thought a little longer and sighed.
All right.
"But on one condition." Forks raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "You can't leave me alone there." "So, you want me to stay close?" She rolled her eyes. It just means I don't want to be thrown into a sea of strangers. He nodded.
Deal.
Monica left his office feeling like she was stepping into something far more complicated than she had imagined. Monica narrowed her eyes. So, that means she's trying to figure out what's going on between us? Forks gave her a subtle smile. And, do you think there's something going on? She opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't want to say anything that could be misinterpreted. Before she could come up with an intelligent response, a group of business people approached Forks to talk. Taking the opportunity, Monica quietly slipped away. She needed a moment to breathe. She walked over to the drinks table and picked up a glass of juice. As she took a sip, a male voice beside her spoke. "You're the woman of the moment." She walked over to the drinks table and picked up a glass of juice. As she took a sip, a male voice beside her spoke. "You're the woman of the moment." She turned to see a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit, watching her with an intrigued smile. "Excuse me? Everyone here is trying to figure out who you are." She offered a polite smile. "There's not much to figure out. Hard to believe that when you show up with Forks Blake." She narrowed her eyes. "Do you know him well?" "Well enough to know he doesn't usually bring a date to events." She took another sip of juice and glanced around as if looking for a distraction. "And who are you?" "Apologies. Where are my manners?" He extended his hand. "Logan Pierce. I work in the tech sector."
She shook his hand.
"Monica Martin, intern at DX Corporation." Logan smirked knowingly. "Right." She blinked. "How do you know that?" "Let's just say I have good sources." Monica didn't have time to process that information because, in the next instant, Forks appeared beside them, his expression serious. "Pierce," he said coolly. The two men exchanged a tense look, as if there was a complicated history between them. Monica immediately felt the shift in the atmosphere. "You two already know each other?" Logan kept his smile. "Let's just say we've worked on opposite sides a few times." Forks didn't look away. "And we still do." Monica felt it was best to stay out of this conversation. Logan picked up a glass of wine and turned back to her. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Monica. I hope we run into each other again." Then, with one last glance at Forks, he walked away. She remained silent for a moment before turning to Forks. "What was that?" "Nothing you need to worry about. You clearly don't like him." Forks crossed his arms. "Logan likes to stir things up. He always tries to insert himself into other people's business." "And I'm someone's business now?" He held her gaze for a moment before answering. "You're my intern." She folded her arms. "That doesn't answer my question." Forks let out a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated with himself. "I just don't like when he gets too close." Monica wasn't sure how to interpret that, but before she could press further, another round of greetings began, pulling them both back into the flow of the event. Later that night, the evening passed in a blur of formal conversations and subtle glances between her and Forks. He never left her alone for too long, as if he was always keeping an eye on anyone who tried to get too close. When they finally left, Monica felt relieved to escape the formal setting. In the car, the silence between them felt heavier than usual. She decided to break it. "So, Logan Pierce seems to enjoy provoking you." Forks kept his eyes on the road. "He likes to test limits." She leaned slightly toward him. "And what exactly was he trying to test with me?" Forks glanced at her before responding. "That's something only he can answer." Monica realized she wouldn't get anything more out of him tonight. She sighed and looked out the window. This night had been more revealing than she expected, and now, more than ever, she felt caught in a game she was only beginning to understand. The next morning, Monica woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't just the fact that she had spent the night surrounded by business executives, being analyzed like some kind of mystery. Something about last night still lingered in her mind, the tension between Forks and Logan. She had never seen Forks so closed off and protective before. He was always reserved, always in control. But at the event, he had been different. From the moment Logan approached her, Forks became more alert, more intense. And that made her curious. When she arrived at the office, She noticed that the rumors had only grown stronger. "So, our dear intern has been promoted to the CEO's official date," one colleague teased. "He's never taken anyone to an event before. Are you sure there's nothing more going on?" Victoria whispered beside her. Monica rolled her eyes. "Don't you all have work to do?" "We do, but gossip is more interesting." Shaking her head, she made her way to her desk, determined to ignore the chatter. But her determination didn't last long. A few minutes after sitting down, a new email notification popped up. Subject: CEO's office.
Now.
Monica's heart skipped a beat. She closed her laptop, grabbed her notebook, and walked up to the executive floor. When she entered Forks's office, he was already waiting for her.
"Close the door," he said.
She obeyed, but crossed her arms. "This sounds serious." He looked up from his documents and motioned toward the chair in front of him. "Sit down." She sat, feeling the tension in the air. "What is it?" Forks leaned back in his chair, watching her for a moment before speaking. "Logan Pierce called me this morning." Monica blinked in surprise. "And what did he want?" "He asked about you." She frowned. "About me?"
"Yes."
"He wants to offer you a job at his company." Her eyes widened.
"What?"
Forks kept his expression serious. "He wants you to work for him." Monica fell silent, trying to process what she had just heard. "But why?" "He thinks you have potential." She let out a nervous laugh. "That doesn't make sense. I'm just an intern." Forks narrowed his eyes. "Do you really believe that?" She hesitated. "Well, yes." He shook his head. "Monica, you don't realize the impact you have." She blushed slightly. "You're exaggerating." He studied her for a moment before continuing. "Do you plan to accept the offer?" She frowned. "Do you want me to?" Forks didn't answer right away. His gaze remained fixed on her, as if assessing her reaction. "I want to know what you want," she sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I don't know. It all happened so fast. And honestly, I don't trust Logan."
Forks nodded.
"Then we're on the same page." She looked at him carefully. "Why do I feel like you already knew he was going to do this?" He rested his elbows on the table. "Logan never does anything without an ulterior motive. He's trying to use you to get to me." Monica swallowed hard. "This sounds more serious than I thought." "Because it is." A silence settled between them. Finally, Monica took a deep breath and smiled. "I guess I should get ready for another chapter in this corporate soap opera." Forks smirked. "You've been part of it for a long time." She stood up, still processing their conversation. "Don't worry, Forks. I'm not going anywhere." He nodded, and for the first time he seemed to relax a little. Monica left Forks's office with her heart racing. What had once been a game of teasing and misunderstandings now felt much more serious. Logan Pierce wasn't just trying to recruit her, he wanted to use her against Forks. And the question that wouldn't leave her mind was, why? A year later, life had changed completely. Monica and Forks were married, happy, and managing the delicate balance between work and personal life. Then one day, everything shifted. Monica stared at the pregnancy test for a long moment. She blinked, took a deep breath, and looked again. The result hadn't changed. She was pregnant. Her heart pounded. How would she tell Forks? He would be home in minutes, and she knew she couldn't keep it a secret for long. So she decided to surprise him. When Forks walked in, he found Monica sitting on the couch, holding an envelope. "What's this?" he asked, taking off his jacket and sitting beside her. She smiled, handing it to him. A little surprise. He opened it and pulled out a piece of paper. Reading it out loud, his voice slowed with each word. "Congratulations. You've been promoted to daddy." Forks blinked.
"Once. Twice."
Then he turned to her, his eyes wide. "Are you serious?" Monica nodded, biting her lip as she fought back emotions. In an instant, Forks pulled her into a tight embrace. "I can't believe it," he murmured. She laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Neither could I. I checked the test 3 times." He gently cupped her face and kissed her. "You just made me the happiest man in the world." Monica smiled, feeling her heart swell with happiness. Well, you better get ready. Our life is about to get even crazier. Forks chuckled. And I can't wait for it. She hugged him again, feeling more whole than she ever had before. In that moment, she knew one thing for sure. Her chaos had found a home, and his name was Forks Visor.